Imagine finally escaping the relentless pressures of Washington for a peaceful island getaway, only to have your private flight turn into a nightmare. That's exactly what happened to Senator Evelyn Reed. Seeking relaxation, this accomplished black woman instead faced shocking hostility from a flight attendant aboard a luxury airline jet. What began as subtle disrespect quickly escalated into blatant discrimination, culminating in the senator being forcibly removed from the plane and abandoned at a remote, isolated airport hundreds of miles from anywhere. Witnessed by others, yet left utterly alone. How could this happen? Was it merely a rogue employee, or part of a larger, more sinister plot? Follow Senator Reed's harrowing journey from humiliation and isolation to her courageous fight for justice against powerful forces. Find out how one woman's ordeal sparked a movement. Stay tuned to uncover the truth. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Senator Evelyn Reed, a figure known for her sharp intellect and unwavering dedication in the demanding halls of Congress, stepped into the private jet cabin with a sigh of relief. Weeks of back-to-back committee meetings, tense negotiations, and endless public appearances had left her drained. The prospect of the Maldives, a tropical paradise, promising sun, sand, and blissful anonymity, felt less like a vacation and more like a lifeline. She wore a simple yet elegant pantsuit, her professional armor softened slightly by the anticipation of escape. A gentle smile touched her lips as she took in the luxurious surroundings. This wasn't just a plane, it was a sanctuary on wings. Plush leather seats, softer than any she'd encountered on commercial flights, lined the cabin. Soft ambient light glowed from recessed fixtures in the ceiling, casting a warm, calming hue. Meticulously arranged amenities, from noise-canceling headphones to a selection of fine beverages, chilling discreetly in a built-in cooler, spoke of five-star hospitality. It was the epitome of quiet luxury, a world away from the political battlegrounds she navigated daily. Evelyn stowed her carry-on bag in the overhead compartment and settled into her chosen seat, sinking into the supple leather. She closed her eyes for a moment, savoring the rare stillness, the brief reprieve from the constant pressure and scrutiny. This trip was more than needed. It was essential for recharging her batteries before the next legislative session began. Just as she began to truly unwind, a flight attendant entered the main cabin from the forward galley. She was young, with blonde hair pulled back into a neat bun, her uniform immaculate. A name tag identified her as Emily. Initially, Emily greeted the few other passengers already seated with a warm, practiced smile and polite inquiries about their comfort. Her voice was pleasant, her demeanor professional. However, as Emily's gaze landed on Senator Reed, a subtle but distinct shift occurred. It was almost imperceptible, a fleeting flicker in her eyes, a slight tightening around her mouth. The warmth in her smile seemed to dim, replaced by an expression that Evelyn, honed by years of reading people in high-stakes environments, found difficult to decipher, but undeniably cool. Evelyn, ever observant, noted the change instantly. Maintaining her composure, she offered a polite, gentle nod in Emily's direction. Yet, a small knot of unease formed in her stomach. What had prompted that sudden shift in attitude? Was it recognition, disapproval, something else entirely? Emily briefly consulted the passenger manifest clipped to a board she carried. Her eyes lingered for just a fraction of a second longer than necessary on the name Senator Evelyn Reed. Without another word or glance towards the senator, she turned abruptly and walked briskly back towards the service galley, where another flight attendant waited. Evelyn decided not to dwell on the minor incident. Perhaps the attendant was just having an off day, or felt intimidated. She slipped off her shoes, leaned back comfortably, and reached for a novel she'd been meaning to read for months. Politics could wait, paradise beckoned. But before she could even turn the first page, she felt a distinct sensation, the feeling of being watched. Glancing subtly across the aisle, she saw a younger woman, perhaps in her early 30s, with long dark hair. The woman was looking at her, not with overt rudeness, but with an expression of quiet curiosity mixed with something akin to concern. Evelyn offered a small, polite smile. The woman responded with a slight nod before turning her attention back to her laptop, seemingly engrossed in work. The jet engines hummed steadily as the plane taxied and prepared for takeoff. Once airborne and cruising at altitude, Emily reappeared to begin the beverage service. This time, her avoidance of Senator Reed was unmistakable. She moved down the aisle, offering drinks, engaging in light, courteous conversation with each passenger, asking about their needs with genuine warmth. Evelyn noted the stark contrast. When Emily finally reached her seat, the practiced pleasantries vanished. She placed a glass of water on the tray table, with a small, sharp clink, avoiding eye contact. "Your water," she stated flatly, her tone clipped and devoid of the warmth shown to others. Evelyn raised an eyebrow slightly, but kept her voice even. "Thank you, that's very thoughtful of you," she replied, offering a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Emily merely gave a curt, strange half-smile in return, saying nothing further before quickly retreating to the galley. A chill snaked down Evelyn's spine. This wasn't just unprofessionalism, it felt personal, pointed. Something was definitely wrong. An hour into the flight, the senator found it impossible to relax fully. The beautiful clouds drifting past the window couldn't dispel the uncomfortable atmosphere within the cabin. She took a sip of water, the clinking sound Emily had made still echoing faintly in her mind. She decided to try and focus elsewhere. Her gaze drifted across the aisle to the young woman with the laptop. As their eyes met again, the woman hesitated for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. Unbuckling her seatbelt, she stood up and quietly approached Evelyn's seat, leaning in slightly. "I'm Sarah," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. "Forgive me for intruding, but I couldn't help but notice that flight attendant Emily. She seems to have a real issue with you." Evelyn maintained a polite but cautious expression. "Thank you for your concern, Sarah. I'm sure she's just doing her job." Sarah glanced around nervously, as if ensuring they wouldn't be overheard. "I don't think so," she insisted, her voice barely audible. "Near the galley earlier, I overheard her talking about you to the other attendant. Something about you not belonging, making things unsafe. It worried me." Evelyn's polite smile remained, but her eyes hardened slightly. The casual mention of unsafe sent an alarm bell ringing. "Thank you for letting me know, Sarah. I appreciate it. I'll keep it in mind." Sarah nodded, giving Evelyn a look filled with genuine concern, before returning to her seat. Though she kept a watchful eye on the galley entrance, Evelyn leaned back, her mind racing. Sarah's words confirmed her unease. Emily's behavior wasn't just random rudeness. It seemed calculated, intentional. But why? Was it simply because she was a black woman, in a position of power, occupying a space some felt she didn't belong in? Or was there something more specific, more sinister at play? The whispers Sarah overheard were deeply unsettling. Not long after, Emily emerged from the galley again, this time without a beverage tray. She walked directly to Senator Reed's seat, stopping abruptly and crossing her arms, adopting a stance of authority. "Mrs. Reed," she began, her voice laced with a cold formality that barely masked the underlying hostility. "I need to see your booking confirmation again. We need to verify all passengers on this manifest." The direct confrontation, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, drew immediate attention. Heads turned, whispers ceased. Evelyn looked up, her expression calm, but her gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "My credentials and booking were verified during boarding," she stated clearly and firmly. "If there is a genuine issue with the manifest, I suggest you address it with the captain or the flight supervisor, not with me mid-flight." Emily's eyes narrowed, momentarily thrown off by the senator's unwavering composure. We just need to ensure everyone on board is supposed to be here. Standard procedure. Safety first," she retorted, though the justification sounded hollow. Evelyn held her gaze. "I assure you, I pose no threat to the safety of this flight. Is there anything specific you need to ask me?" Emily's lips thinned into a semblance of a sneer, but she offered no further explanation, turning sharply and stalking back towards the galley. Just minutes later, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, sounding unusually tense. "Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the interruption. We seem to be experiencing some unexpected technical difficulties. For safety reasons, we will need to make an emergency landing at the nearest available airfield. Please remain calm and follow crew instructions." An emergency landing? Now? The timing felt far too coincidental. Evelyn exchanged a concerned look with Sarah across the aisle. Before anyone could process the announcement fully, Emily reappeared, her expression now hard and unyielding. She marched straight back to Evelyn. "Senator Reed," she commanded, her voice ringing with undisguised animosity, "you need to gather your belongings immediately. Upon landing, you will be required to disembark the aircraft." The sheer audacity of the order stunned the cabin into silence. Several passengers gasped audibly. Sarah shot up from her seat. "You can't do this," she exclaimed, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the tension. "You have no right to remove her from this plane without cause. This is outrageous. It's abuse of power." Emily whirled on Sarah, pointing a finger. "Ma'am, you need to remain seated and stay out of this. This does not concern you." Sarah stepped forward, undeterred, standing almost nose to nose with the flight attendant. It concerns everyone when discrimination happens right before our eyes. What you are doing is wrong, and I will not stand by silently. Other crew members tried to intervene, urging Sarah to sit down, but the atmosphere was charged. Some passengers murmured their disapproval of Emily's actions, but none offered further support. The plane descended rapidly, landing with a jolt on a rough, short runway. Looking out the window, Evelyn saw nothing but scrubland and a small, dilapidated building in the distance. This was no commercial airport. It felt like the middle of nowhere. As instructed, heart pounding with a mixture of disbelief and indignation, Evelyn gathered her few belongings. Emily stood rigidly by the open aircraft door, her face a mask of cold triumph. As Evelyn reached the threshold, Sarah rushed forward again. "I will be a witness for you, Senator," she whispered fiercely. "They cannot get away with this." Evelyn met her gaze, offering a brief, grateful nod, her own eyes flashing with resolve. "Thank you, Sarah. They won't." Then she stepped out of the luxurious cabin and onto the cracked tarmac under the harsh glare of the sun, utterly alone, as the jet engines began to spool up behind her. The roar of the jet engines faded with unnerving speed, leaving Senator Evelyn Reed standing alone on the cracked, sun-baked tarmac. An oppressive silence descended, broken only by the faint buzz of insects and the whisper of wind across the desolate landscape. Heat radiated upwards, shimmering in waves, making the distant, dilapidated building seem to waver like a mirage. There were no ground crew, no vehicles, no signs of life, just endless scrubland, stretching towards a hazy horizon under a vast, indifferent sky. The feeling of isolation was absolute, a stark contrast to the insulated luxury she had occupied only moments before. Humiliation warred with disbelief, quickly followed by a surge of cold anger. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a deliberate, calculated act of malice. Clutching her small carry-on, Evelyn straightened her shoulders. Panic wouldn't help. She assessed her surroundings. The small building, perhaps a few hundred yards away, was the only structure in sight. It looked like an old administrative office, or perhaps a rudimentary terminal from a forgotten era. With resolute steps, she began walking towards it, her sensible heels clicking awkwardly on the uneven asphalt. The silence felt heavy, watchful. Every crunch of gravel underfoot seemed unnervingly loud. As she drew closer, the building's state of neglect became more apparent. Paint peeled from the walls in long strips. Some windows were boarded up, others coated thick with grime. She pushed open the main door, which groaned on rusty hinges. The interior mirrored the exterior's decay. A few faded plastic chairs lined one wall. A dusty reception counter stood opposite, littered with cobwebs and yellowed, scattered papers that looked untouched for years. The air hung stale and motionless. Evelyn's eyes scanned the room, searching desperately for any sign of functionality. A working telephone, a radio, anything. Behind the counter, she spotted an old beige landline phone. Heart quickening with a flicker of hope, she lifted the receiver. The line was dead. Only a hollow, empty silence met her ear. She replaced it slowly, the small hope extinguishing as quickly as it had flared. She pulled out her personal cell phone, already knowing the likely outcome in such a remote location. As expected, no service. She tried again, walking towards a window, holding it high, but the result remained unchanged. The lack of signal felt less like happenstance, and more like another layer of her deliberate isolation. Outside, the sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, but casting long, ominous shadows across the landscape. Staying here overnight felt deeply unsafe. This airfield wasn't just remote, it felt abandoned, possibly for reasons she didn't want to contemplate. She had no water beyond the half-finished glass. Emily had slammed down, no food, and no way to contact the outside world. She had to move. Spotting a narrow, overgrown track leading away from the airfield towards a distant line of trees, she made her decision. It was the only path that suggested a way out. Back inside the dusty office, a quick search yielded a small functional flashlight in a drawer, a minor miracle. Gripping it tightly alongside her bag, Evelyn stepped back out into the fading light and started down the path. The track quickly became rougher, transitioning from broken asphalt to packed dirt. As twilight deepened into true darkness, the sounds of the wilderness pressed in. Leaves rustled in the light breeze, twigs snapped underfoot, and unseen creatures skittered in the undergrowth. Evelyn switched on the flashlight, its narrow beam cutting a small circle of visibility ahead, making the surrounding darkness seem even deeper and more menacing. Every shadow seemed to jump, every nocturnal sound amplified. The feeling of being watched returned, stronger this time, prickling the back of her neck. Was it just nerves, the isolation playing tricks on her mind, or was someone actually out there? She stopped several times, sweeping the flashlight beam behind her, and into the dense bushes lining the path, heart pounding. Nothing, just the empty track and the whispering trees. Still, the unsettling feeling lingered, urging her onward, quickening her pace despite her growing fatigue. After what felt like an eternity, perhaps 20 or 30 minutes of tense walking, a faint glimmer of light appeared through the trees ahead. Not just one light, but several, clustered together. Hope surged through her, powerful and immediate. Civilization. As she drew nearer, the sounds of life drifted on the night air, the distant murmur of voices, perhaps the faint strains of music, the bark of a dog. Relief washed over her, so potent it almost buckled her knees. She emerged from the tree line, onto a wider dirt road at the edge of a small humble village. Simple houses, some with lights glowing warmly in their windows, were gathered together. Her sudden appearance from the darkness drew immediate attention. A few villagers who were outside stopped their conversations, their faces curious, but wary in the dim light. An older man with kind eyes and weathered features, clearly a respected figure, stepped forward cautiously. "Ma'am," he called out, his voice calm, but questioning, "are you lost? It's late to be walking out here." Evelyn took a steadying breath, trying to project calm, despite her exhaustion and disheveled state. "Good evening," she said, her voice a little hoarse. My plane had to make an unexpected landing at the old airfield back there. I was stranded. I need help contacting my office, but there's no phone service." The man, who introduced himself as Elder Samuel, listened intently, his initial wariness softening into concern as he took in her appearance. The smart but now slightly travel-worn suit, the small carry-on, the clear distress in her eyes, despite her composure. He nodded slowly. "The old field. Yes, nothing lands there anymore. And the signal is bad here too, I'm afraid. But you look like you've had a hard journey. Please, come. You can rest here for the night. We don't have much, but you are welcome." Other villagers gathered, their curiosity now mingled with sympathy. They led her towards a small clean hut. Inside, a woman gently offered her water and a simple meal of rice and vegetables, which Evelyn accepted gratefully. Another woman noticed a small scrape on her leg, likely from a branch on the path, and tended to it with quiet efficiency using local remedies. Amidst this unexpected kindness, a young girl, perhaps 12 years old, with bright intelligent eyes, shyly approached. She looked at Evelyn with wide-eyed awe. You're Senator Evelyn Reed, aren't you?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly with excitement. "I've seen you on the news. My teacher showed us. You fight for people." Evelyn managed a tired smile, touched by the girl's recognition in this remote corner of the world. "Yes, I am," she confirmed gently. The girl introduced herself as Asha. "Wow, it's really you. You're so strong. I want to be strong like you when I grow up," Asha declared with youthful conviction. Looking into Asha's earnest face, feeling the genuine warmth and acceptance from these strangers after the cold hostility she'd endured, something solidified within Evelyn. This wasn't just about her own humiliation anymore. It was about the principle. It was about ensuring that no one, regardless of who they were, should be treated with such contempt and stripped of their rights. Asha's innocent admiration was a potent reminder of why she fought the battles she did. "Thank you, Asha," Evelyn said, her voice regaining some of its familiar strength. "You are strong. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. And believe me," she added, her eyes holding a new fire, "I will make sure those who did this understand that treating people unfairly has consequences." That night, lying on a simple cot in the small hut, the sounds of the quiet village outside, Evelyn replayed the day's events. The indignation burned, but now it was tempered with steely resolve. They thought they could silence her, abandon her, make her disappear quietly. They were wrong. This fight was just beginning. The following morning, Elder Samuel and the villagers helped arrange transport for Senator Reed. A rickety but reliable pickup truck driven by Samuel's nephew arrived to take her several hours over bumpy roads to the nearest town. With a functioning airstrip, one capable of handling a charter flight back to the reality she had temporarily escaped. As she bid farewell to the kind villagers, especially young Asha, whose bright eyes reflected both admiration and concern, Evelyn felt a profound sense of gratitude mixed with renewed determination. Their simple generosity stood in stark contrast to the calculated cruelty she had experienced. "Thank you," she told Elder Samuel sincerely. "I won't forget what you've done for me." He simply nodded, his gaze steady. "Go safely, Senator, and may justice find its way." Hours later, Evelyn finally arrived back in Washington, D.C., stepping off a hastily arranged charter flight, not into the anticipated calm after a vacation, but into the center of a brewing storm of her own making. Her chief of staff, Marcus, and her lead legal counsel, Eleanor Vance, were waiting, their faces etched with worry that quickly turned to disbelief, and then simmering fury, as Evelyn recounted the events of the past 36 hours. The hostility from Emily, the nonsensical emergency landing, the forced removal, the abandonment, the long walk through the dark, the kindness of strangers. Eleanor, a seasoned litigator known for her sharp mind and unflappable demeanor, listened intently, her expression growing increasingly grim. Marcus paced the office, clenching and unclenching his fists. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "They targeted you, Evelyn." "This wasn't random." "No," Evelyn agreed, her voice quiet but firm. "It wasn't, and that's precisely why we can't let this be swept under the rug. This isn't just about me. It's about the abuse of power, about the assumption that position or race makes someone less deserving of basic respect and rights. We have to go public, Marcus, immediately." They discussed the implications, the media scrutiny, the potential political fallout. But Evelyn was resolute. Silence would be complicity. "They counted on me being embarrassed, on wanting this to disappear quietly," she stated, her eyes flashing. "They miscalculated." The next day, a press conference was held on the steps outside Evelyn's Senate office building. The area swarmed with reporters, photographers and news crews from every major network and publication. The air crackled with anticipation. Evelyn stepped up to the podium, composed and resolute, dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored suit that conveyed authority. She looked directly into the cameras, her voice clear and unwavering as she began to speak. "Yesterday," she started, her voice ringing with conviction, "I was scheduled to begin a much-needed personal trip. Instead, I experienced firsthand an appalling act of discrimination and abuse of authority aboard a flight operated by airline name fictional. I was targeted, verbally harassed, and ultimately forcibly removed from the aircraft without any valid justification, under the guise of a fabricated technical emergency, and abandoned at a remote, non-operational airfield." She detailed the events calmly but powerfully, describing Emily's escalating hostility, the suspicious timing of the emergency, and the humiliation of being ejected while other passengers looked on. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not standard procedure. This was a calculated act intended to demean and isolate. "What happened to me is symptomatic of a larger issue where power is misused, and individuals feel entitled to act with impunity. I am speaking out today not just for myself, but for every person who has ever been made to feel less than, who has faced discrimination, and been told implicitly or explicitly that they do not belong." Her words hit like thunderbolts. Within hours, the press conference footage was everywhere. The hashtag #JusticeForSenator Reed exploded across social media platforms. The story dominated news cycles, sparking outrage and discussions about racism, abuse of power, and corporate accountability. The airline, caught completely off guard by the swift and public denouncement, scrambled to respond. Their initial statement was weak and dismissive, vaguely referencing safety protocols, and suggesting the flight attendant might have misinterpreted a situation, hinting Emily had acted alone and perhaps overzealously. This attempt to minimize the incident only fueled the public's anger. Evelyn and her legal team, led by Eleanor Vance, wasted no time. A comprehensive lawsuit was filed against the airline and against Emily personally, alleging discrimination, harassment, defamation, false imprisonment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. "We are not seeking just monetary damages," Eleanor stated in a release accompanying the lawsuit filing. "We are seeking accountability, transparency, and fundamental changes to ensure this never happens again." The team immediately began gathering crucial evidence. They contacted Sarah, the lawyer who had bravely confronted Emily on the flight. Sarah readily agreed to testify, providing a detailed, corroborated account of Emily's discriminatory behavior and the lack of any legitimate reason for Evelyn's removal. Her perspective as a fellow passenger and legal professional carried significant weight. Then came another breakthrough. Another passenger from the flight contacted Eleanor's office. He had discreetly recorded portions of the confrontation between Emily and Senator Reed, capturing Emily's hostile tone and unreasonable demands. He had also filmed the moment Evelyn was forced to disembark. Hesitant at first, but spurred by the public discourse, he provided the footage. The video quickly went viral, offering undeniable visual proof that contradicted the airline's narrative. The most damning piece of evidence, however, arrived through a confidential channel. An anonymous whistleblower within the airline, appalled by the incident and the subsequent cover-up attempt, contacted Eleanor's team. They provided internal communications, emails and recorded snippets from the aircraft's internal communication system, proving that Emily hadn't acted alone. She had been explicitly instructed by a high-level airline executive, a man known to have strong opposing political affiliations to Senator Reed, to handle the senator and find a pretext for her removal from the flight. The executive's messages contained coded but unmistakable language, indicating Evelyn was unwelcome and that her presence was considered a complication to be eliminated. The pieces clicked into place. Emily's initial hostility, the feigned emergency, the specific targeting of Evelyn. It wasn't just personal bias, or a flight attendant exceeding her authority. It was an orchestrated political hit job, disguised as a safety issue. Evelyn sat with Eleanor and Marcus, reviewing the new evidence. The scope of the conspiracy was chilling. So Evelyn said quietly, her gaze steely, "This goes far beyond one prejudiced employee. This is corruption reaching into the executive suite, driven by political animosity." Eleanor nodded grimly. They thought they could get away with it, using their power and the isolation of an aircraft cabin as weapons. "They underestimated you, Senator." Evelyn looked out the window at the Capitol dome in the distance. "They underestimated the truth," she corrected, "and we are going to make sure the whole world sees it." The stage was set for a legal battle that would test not only the airline's reputation, but the very principles of justice and equality. The trial began weeks later, capturing the nation's rapt attention. The federal courthouse buzzed with an energy usually reserved for landmark cases. Media trucks lined the streets, and inside, the courtroom was packed to capacity with reporters, legal observers, and members of the public eager to witness the proceedings firsthand. On one side sat Senator Evelyn Reed, flanked by her formidable legal counsel, Eleanor Vance, and her steadfast chief of staff, Marcus. Evelyn projected an aura of quiet strength, her gaze fixed forward. Opposite them, the airline's high-powered legal team surrounded a visibly anxious Emily, and several stone-faced airline executives, the weight of public scrutiny palpable in the air. Eleanor Vance delivered the opening statement, her voice resonating with clarity and conviction. "Your Honor, members of the jury," she began, "we are here today because Senator Evelyn Reed, a dedicated public servant, was subjected to a degrading act of discrimination and a flagrant abuse of corporate power. This was not a simple misunderstanding or a lapse in judgment. It was a calculated effort to humiliate and silence a black woman in a position of influence, orchestrated from within the highest levels of this airline. We will demonstrate not only the personal harm inflicted upon Senator Reed, but also the dangerous precedent set when corporations believe they can operate above the principles of equality and basic human decency." The evidence presented was methodical and damning. The passengers' video footage played on large screens, silencing the courtroom as Emily's dismissive tone and Evelyn's forced departure unfolded graphically. Sarah took the stand, her testimony clear, credible, and impassioned. She recounted every detail of Emily's shifting demeanor, the overheard conversation confirming malicious intent, the lack of any disruptive behavior from the senator, and the utter absurdity of the emergency landing pretext. "There was no safety concern," Sarah stated firmly, looking directly at the jury. "There was only prejudice and a disturbing exercise of unwarranted authority. I felt compelled to speak out then, and I feel compelled to testify now." The passenger who recorded the video corroborated Sarah's account, emphasizing the calm atmosphere before Emily's targeted confrontation, and the lack of any threat posed by Senator Reed. But the testimony that shattered the airline's defense came from the whistleblower flight attendant. Visibly nervous but resolute, she detailed the internal communication system chatter, confirming she had heard the executive's specific instruction to Emily to find a way to remove Senator Reed from the flight before reaching the Maldives. Emily was following orders, the attendant testified, her voice trembling slightly. Orders that came directly from Mr. Executive's name fictional. We all knew it was wrong, but the pressure, the fear of losing our jobs. I couldn't stay silent after seeing what happened. The airline's lawyers attempted to discredit the witnesses, painting Emily as perhaps overly stressed but fundamentally following safety protocols, and suggesting the executive's communications were misinterpreted. However, faced with the corroborated testimonies, the video evidence, and the internal communications presented by Eleanor's team, their arguments crumbled. The narrative of a rogue employee evaporated, replaced by the stark reality of a corporate conspiracy, rooted in political animosity and potentially racial bias. In her closing argument, Eleanor Vance tied all the threads together. This case is about more than one senator, one flight attendant, or one airline, she declared, her voice ringing through the silent courtroom. It's about accountability. It's about sending a message that power does not grant immunity from consequences. It's about affirming that dignity and respect are not conditional privileges, but fundamental rights. The defendants counted on secrecy, on intimidation, on the belief that Senator Reed would quietly endure this indignity. They were wrong. We ask you, the jury, to deliver a verdict that echoes the values of fairness and equality this nation strives for. The jury deliberated for less than a day. The tension in the courtroom was thick as they filed back in. The foreperson delivered the verdict, guilty. Emily was found liable for discrimination and harassment. Crucially, the airline itself was found liable not only for the actions of its employee but also for negligence in its oversight, and most significantly, for fostering an environment where such abuse of power, driven by executive mandate, could occur. The verdict included findings of discrimination, abuse of power, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The consequences were immediate and substantial. The court ordered the airline to pay significant punitive and compensatory damages to Senator Reed. Furthermore, the airline was mandated to implement comprehensive, independently monitored anti-discrimination training programs for all staff, from flight crews to executives, and to overhaul its procedures for handling passenger disputes and alleged safety concerns. Emily was terminated effective immediately. The executive who gave the orders was placed on administrative leave pending further internal and potentially criminal investigation, his career in tatters. As Senator Reed and her team exited the courthouse, they were met by a roar from the crowd gathered outside. Supporters held signs reading "Justice Prevailed" and "Justice for Senator Reed Vindicated." Cheers erupted as Evelyn stepped towards the waiting microphones. Her expression was solemn but relieved. "Today," she said, her voice steady and clear, "justice has been served. This verdict sends a clear message. Discrimination and the abuse of power will not be tolerated. But this victory is not mine alone. It belongs to everyone who has ever been made to feel small, voiceless, or unwelcome. It belongs to Sarah, who bravely spoke up. It belongs to the witnesses who came forward. It belongs to the public, who demanded accountability." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "This experience, however painful, has strengthened my resolve. It has shown me that while the fight for true equality is far from over, it is a fight worth waging. That is why today, I am announcing the formation of a new foundation, Justice for All. This organization will be dedicated to providing legal aid and support to victims of discrimination, advocating for stronger protections under the law, like the Comprehensive Justice Act we must pass, and working to educate communities about their rights. What happened to me should not happen to anyone. We will work tirelessly to ensure it doesn't." In the following weeks, Justice for All began to take shape, fueled by donations and an outpouring of volunteer support. Evelyn, alongside Marcus and Eleanor, channeled the energy from the trial into building an organization that could create lasting change. She often thought of Asha and the villagers, whose simple kindness had been a beacon in a dark time. Their inherent sense of justice, offered without hesitation, served as a constant reminder of the values she was fighting for. Late one evening, standing in her quiet office, overlooking the lights of Washington, D.C., Evelyn Reed reflected on the tumultuous journey. The humiliation on the tarmac felt like a lifetime ago, yet the memory remained a potent fuel. The trial was won, accountability was beginning, and a new path forward had been forged. But she knew, with absolute certainty, that this wasn't an ending. It was, as Elder Samuel had hoped, justice finding its way, not just for her, but potentially for countless others. And her work, the work of justice for all, was only just beginning. Senator Reed's challenging journey reminds us that prejudice and abuse of power can surface unexpectedly, even miles above the earth. Her ordeal highlights a crucial life lesson: silence in the face of injustice often allows wrongdoing to thrive. Real strength isn't merely enduring hardship, but summoning the courage to speak truth to power, demand accountability, and even transform personal pain into positive action that helps others. Like the senator, who found support from unexpected allies like Sarah and kind villagers, we too can discover resilience and purpose in difficult times. Her fight demonstrates that one determined voice, backed by truth, can challenge formidable systems and inspire lasting change far beyond a single incident. What did Senator Reed's story make you feel? Have you ever witnessed or faced something similar where courage made a difference? I'd be honored if you shared your reflections in the comments below. Connecting through these stories means a lot to me and our community here. If her journey moved you, please show some love with a like, and consider subscribing to join us as we explore more powerful stories together.